Welcome to Eden's Gate Resurrection Savage, the first new Savage difficulty raid introduced in patch 505 of Shadowbringers. At the start of the encounter, we assign players positions at the Cardinals and Intercardinals, similar to Titania EX. Melee and tanks should be assigned Cardinals, ranged and healers assigned Intercardinals. We also mark A, B, C, and D around the center circle of the arena for orientation and as a meetup point for later mechanics. Eden's Gravity is a high damage raid-wide AoE that deals percentage-based damage. Damage reduction cooldowns are not useful for this ability, but shields still help soften the blow. The first Vice and Virtue will mark the 4 DPS with a blue circular icon. After a short delay, these players will drop a black Vice of Apathy puddle just like in the normal encounter. Avoid dropping these too close to the boss, as this is followed by Eden's Flare, an inverted point-blank AoE with a safe area inside the boss's hitbox. The next Vice and Virtue will mark both tanks with the blue circle icon, and at the end of the cast will unleash hard-hitting column AoEs that should be cooled down through. Spear of Paradise is a high-damage tank buster that hits twice. The first hit will also give the tank physical vulnerability up, making the second hit lethal. A tank swap can prevent the second hit from killing the main tank, but our Dark Knight chose to eat both hits with Living Dead prior to the swap. Immediately after Spear of Paradise goes out, the third Vice and Virtue will mark both healers with Prey. These markers will hit affected players with a tank buster along with a potent bleed and should be passed to the tanks immediately. Pure Light functions the same as a normal encounter. Eden Prime will jump to the furthest corner and channel a lethal arena-wide AoE, the small safe zone in the corner behind it. Delta Attack also functions identically to normal, but without telegraphs. 1 DPS and 1 tank or healer should be assigned to each of the 4 quadrants created by the cross-shaped lightning AoE, one on the inside near Eden, and one on the outside closer to the corner. Dimensional Shift will deal high raid-wide damage and transition the phase. Mitigation is effective here. When Eden's cast of Paradise Lost finishes, the 4 players furthest from Eden Prime will be targeted for a series of 5 circle AoEs. To maintain uptime, the ranged and healer should bait these mechanics and move to the quadrant their clock position is in, and drop their AoEs in a circular manner. Halfway through the Pure Beam cast, when the 5th AoE telegraph goes out, every player should report to their respective orb based on their clock positions, standing just next to the orb, between it and the edge of the arena. These orbs will target the nearest player with the high damage column AoE that inflicts magic vulnerability up, making getting hit by more than one of these AoEs lethal. After another Pure Light and Dimensional Shift, Eden Prime will cast Fagor Maximus, dealing heavy raid damage and transitioning the phase. After the 2 Guardians of Paradise impact, 1 tank should grab each before grouping them together and facing them away from the party. Their first cast, Mana Boost, must be interrupted to avoid their later AoEs from wiping the raid. We had each tank be responsible for interrupting the ad they are tanking. The ads will cast Mana Burst simultaneously, dealing high raid-wide damage. Watch the cleaves and burn them down before they enrage. After losing a minute of your life, the party will take heavy damage from Eternal Breath. At this time, the 2 groups of 4 can stack together. We had 1 group at A and 1 group at B. Eden will cast Paradise Regained, changing the function of many of its spells. The next Vice and Virtue will once again mark both the tanks. This cast is a split damage AoE that will also inflict physical vulnerability up on the first player hit. As such, have the tank stack behind the other players in the group. These AoEs also inflict magic vulnerability up, so avoid being clipped by both blasts. Immediately following these split damage groups, the next Vice and Virtue will mark all 4 DPS players with another split damage AoE that also inflicts magic vulnerability up. We have players stack on the markers in the quadrants they were assigned for Delta Attack. If you've done this correctly, each DPS will be in a separate quadrant with 1 tank or healer. Eden Prime will next cast a new version of Delta Attack. This Delta Attack targets each tank with a high damage Thunder AoE that gives lightning resistance down, the rest of the party with a split damage Fire AoE, and hits the entire arena besides a medium circle around the boss with an Ice AoE. We place 1 tank each at A and B with the rest of the party stacked behind the boss between C and D. The next Vice and Virtue marks both healers with a Prey marker that will inflict healing potency down, physical vulnerability up, and to poison damage over time on their target. The poison dot doesn't hit too hard, so we pass these to our DPS to avoid gimping our tanks and healers. 1 DPS can even be given both of these Prey markers, but there doesn't seem to be any strategic value unless your strategy is to stress your healers out. The next Dimensional Shift will summon 4 Arcane Spheres as well as 4 rotating orbs at the Arena Cardinals. Our group handled this mechanic by having the tanks and melee stay in the middle to maintain uptime on the Arcane Spheres. The ranged and healers move out to handle the rotating orbs. These orbs fire 3-column AoEs multiple times, rotating a total of 90 degrees as they do so. The north orb can be baited to the north, and the south orb to the south without issue, but the east and west orbs need to be baited in such a way that their blast will rotate to the outside of the arena to avoid cleaving the party. In other words, the east orb is clockwise, the baiter needs to stand on its north side, and if the east orb is counterclockwise, the baiter needs to stand on its south side. As soon as the column telegraphs appear, the entire party can stack underneath of Eden, finish burning down the spheres, and resume their assault. Eden's next vice and virtue will be the same as the first, only in a different order. Tank cleave markers into Spear of Paradise, into DPS puddles, into Delta attack. These puddles will persist through the Delta attack, so they should be dropped somewhere where no one will be spreading for that mechanic. The Cardinals of the Cross Lightning can be assigned, but there should be ample space to drop these puddles and dodge the Delta safely. After this Delta attack, the first set of healer praise that should be passed to the tanks will go out. At this point you've seen everything Eden has to throw at you. The DPS check is pretty lax, so pay attention and soon you'll have your first item level 470 pieces. If you win the rolls anyways.